Robert Baker, what's going on?
Hey there everyone, got a very special video here for you today with the one and only Mr. Phil X. Phil was nice enough to stop over while he was in town. I know he's got a million things going on, so a big ol' thank you to him for taking the time to stop over here and talk about tone, dialing in guitar tone, playing, and talk about his new pedal, the PXO. So this is just a fantastic sounding pedal from the guys over at J-Rocket and of course Phil. Love the overdrive. The boost is incredible. Really, really like the boost side of this pedal. I do want to give a special thank you to Sweetwater for sending this out to me real quick so we could be here in time for when Phil was here. So the video will be sponsored by Sweetwater. Thank you guys. This is just a heavy feeling pedal. So great pedal. The tones, if you're interested in it at all, Phil came over. He was playing my trusty 79 KM. Which I was like, do you want a different guitar, man? I know the frets are kind of like worn out on this. The volume knob only half works. And he's just like, no, man, I'm adjusting to it. And he played it for a few minutes, and he was good to go. The amp we're using is the Z-Rec. Other than that, running into the aux. And hope you enjoyed the video. There is a ton, just so many cool little tidbits, if you listen to the full thing, that Phil gives us about tone and getting good sounds. Also, if you guys would, do me a huge favor, hit the subscribe button. It really does help the channel out a bunch. Phil X's band, The Drills, have an album coming out on March 28th. So lots of cool stuff for you to check out. So without further ado, thank you again, Phil, for stopping over. And here's the video. Later, guys.
How you doing? Phil X and Robert Baker's on the other side of the camera. And this is his abode.
Yes, I'm the one with the vision. I have the vision.
You do have a vision. I want to comply. I want to, whatever you're seeing in your head, I will do my best to make it happen.
Yeah, and what I thought was cool was you, like, unlike a lot of people, you experience tone in like so many different ways than say someone like myself. You are dialing in tones for sessions and trios, stadiums, like.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, the application is, for me, people are like, how did you get that tone? It's like, it's just, I'm searching for a good rock tone. Mm-hmm. But what makes it more fun, because as soon as you say, somebody says, hey, it's all in the hands, then everybody's saying, yeah, but it's all in the hands. Yeah, but toys are fun, and I want something that responds to my hands. So we were talking about this earlier. For me, if I was on tour with Bon Jovi, and say before the tour we were doing 3 weeks rehearsal, I auditioned 24 overdrive pedals to find the one that worked with in-ears, because I want to stand in front of my amp. But when you're on the road with a mega band like that, if the singer goes, yeah, all the cabs are going in ISO boxes under the stage, you have to submit.
Yeah, they go in an ISO cab under the stage.
Right. So the funny thing about that is that I realized that during those rehearsals that I would bring an overdrive that sounded great, plug it into my amp with my amp screaming at my face, and then I'd come in and plug it into the board that I was using for Bon Jovi, and it didn't quite have, not just the response, it didn't have the tonal characteristic that I was requiring. Mm-hmm. So I was like, wow, why does it sound great blasting, but in mic'd up and in the in-ears, it didn't do the same thing. So it took a while to figure out overdrives that did. And then when you go on tour, you're on a road with a guy like John Shanks who wants to go to a music store in every city and buy a guitar. I'm like, well, maybe I'll get a pedal or something. And then at the same time, when you're in a mega band, pedals are getting flung at you. Like, hey, try this, try this, try this. So, hey, fuck, it looks cool.
Yeah.
Let's see how it sounds. So, after the whole broad scope of checking out overdrive pedals, it was really fun talking to J-Rocket. And hey, try out this circuit. Hey, what do you think of this circuit? We almost did a 6-band EQ, like the Steve Stevens.
Oh yeah.
Or the melody, where they have like a clip circuit and you can really carve the EQ. And for me, I realized I also don't like too many buttons. Because it's going to change from room to room, So, but I also realized that instead of a single tone knob, I like a treble and bass. And that goes way back to 15 years ago when my main thing was the $49 special, the Bad Monkey. And oh wow, man, I can really get more of what I want if I got a treble and a bass knob. So that was cool. So again, getting back to J Rocket sending me this one circuit 6 months before we dialed in the PXO, it was the only thing I used, and I go, I love this. And then they sent me another one. I'm like, I love this too. So they're like, well, let's put both in one pedal.
So that's really fascinating to me because this isn't a pedal that you made just looking for like one particular sound. It was, you were applying it to so many different areas, like the live situations, you know, at home,
and being one of the geekiest guitar geeks I know, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I thought the pre and post thing was a myth. I gotta post a picture sometime of the prototype that they gave me, because they made that switch a foot switch that was in between.
Oh.
And I always step on both anyway sometimes, because I'm a spaz. That's why when people started making mini pedals, I'm like, why?
No.
I'm gonna step on 6 trying to tune. And then, anyways, but they made it easy for me to, okay, so that's pre, that's post, that's pre, that post, and the difference was crazy. So, okay, let's do the pre-post, but let's make it a slide switch. So we did that. But what was really important to me was every application.
Yeah.
I go to the studio, hey, we need an overdrive with this amp. I plug this in, and if I can get something out of the overdrive, I can get something different out of the boost. And if you cascade them together, then that's a whole other vibe. So that always works. And then I have it on my drills board where it's minimalist, and then I have it on my Bon Jovi board, which isn't quite minimalist, because there's a talk box and a wah and a chorus and a delay and I need, even if it's one song, I need a Leslie sound for always. So I have a Leslie sound. So all this stuff, no matter what I do, when I put this in front, I'm getting everything I want.
Yeah.
And it happened with the cabinet blaring at my knees, actually, and then with the in-ears, I just felt everything respond the way I wanted it to respond. And the EQ that I can get out of this is amazing.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of it was developed because you're under such a microscope of microphones. Like you're hearing all the tiny details.
Well, I still go, like I'll be, we were just rehearsing, and I'm like, hey man, what do you got on there? And he goes, well, we have a 57 and a 421 on the Friedman cabinet with your Friedman head, and then we're also running, because I asked to run a second amp, which was a Supro Statesman, into another cabinet, and I'm like, well, I'm hearing a phasing issue, and they're like, oh, look, and then they flick a switch, and then there it is. It goes from being tiny and to big. So, stuff can happen, right? Or even though everything's locked down super tight in an ISO box, it could, rolling around in a truck, you lift the lid, and that 57 is not exactly where it's supposed to be, on the sweet spot. So all that stuff can happen. But the thing is rising above stuff and figuring it out, and then bam, you got it back, and you're ready for the show.
Yeah, well, so with all that, obviously that was when the PXO was born.
Yeah.
Awesome sounding pedal, but the boost alone, I'm just like,
yeah,
this thing sounds so. I would use it opposite. Like I use the boost and then I boost the boost. With
I do that with smaller amps.
Yeah.
Like if I'm plugged into my Friedman, I love the overdrive. When I plug into my Friedman, and I got like this maybe a little hairier than Malcolm Young, AC/DC, I have the gain off.
Yeah.
But I have the volume cranked, so it's just really pushing the amp. And then when I want more, then I kick in the boost, and that tilt EQ, you can carve it even more. It's just really sweet.
Yeah.
But I feel like when I plug into a smaller amp, I also put in the boost first, because I want to color it. Oh, now we got it. Mm-hmm. And then exactly what you said. Then you use the overdrive for leads.
What do you start with first when you're dialing in a tone? Like you've got your reference tone right here, and then like if you were to dial in, I don't know, you're getting ready to record a song or something like that.
Yeah.
What are you looking for if you were to dial in?
If I'm say, it's a cool little rock tone, right? Say we're just doing rhythms, right? So I'm hearing everything that I want to hear. I'm hearing the chords. I'm hearing the it sounds really aggressive. I kind of like that. But what if I want a little more aggressive? Then I would probably put the boost in a little bit, and you get. It's a little dirtier. It's very subtle, because we don't have it cranked or anything like that. But the tilt EQ adds a little presence, and the level adds a little more girth in the rock department.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Right.
The rock department. And what I love about it, if your amp is responsive and you're hitting it hard, and then you hit it soft, you hear everything. All the dynamics are there. So it's a true dimensional vibe. That I didn't even turn down. I just hit it lighter. So you're still getting that. But then you go. You got all that. So you hit it hard, it sounds like you're hitting it hard. You hit it light, and it sounds almost clean. So and then even with Bon Jovi, my clean sound is turning the guitar down, and that's all I need. And it's funny how many people have walked up to me and said, "Dude, what are you using for your clean sound?" And I'm like, "This."
Volume knob.
They're like, "What?" The volume guitar knob, man. Just turn it down. And that's it. And if you have a good audio pot, the scope, the ramp is fine. You know, a lot of people use resistors and stuff like that. I don't feel like you have to if you have a very well-made audio pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's worth pointing out, you know, that you've never played this guitar before.
Never.
Have you ever played a Z-Rack before?
No.
No. So it's like as you started dialing stuff in here, getting ready, and then immediately I'm like, oh, it just sounds like Phil X sound right there on gear you've never used before, with your pedal. That's the only kind of familiar territory.
Yeah, that's the familiar territory. And you'll notice that I got a certain amount of gain on the pedal, and then I brought the amp back a little bit, so the amp would clean up just a little bit, so I could get a little more control with the pedal. And I mean that's the same thing when I go to a session. I don't know if they're gonna want me to use my Marshall JMP or my Friedman or a Sun T120, or I go to one studio where the engineer has like 5 Sound City amps, and he's like, we're using the 50 watt, and I plug into it, and he loves it, and I can bear it, but then I'm like, you know, let me use this and get it closer to something I like, so it's more, it's more inspiring. Because there are times when you have to play in a session and the sound is uninspiring. And when that's the case, it's probably going to take you a little longer to get a part if it's your job to come up with it, you know. So there's that. But it's funny how I love. You could even like solo with a clean tone like this, but it's a different solo vibe. Like. It's like it's got a cool. Every note has a little something to say, and to me that's really important. People use so much gain sometimes that everything it doesn't have any dynamics and it's just mushy, and there's no note separation in the chords. That's really important to me too.
Well, and it's funny because we're talking about the pedal and tones and everything, but it's interesting watching your right hand. So much tone is coming from your right hand, the way that you're picking and like the dynamics.
You know what's funny about that is it goes back to when I was learning all the Eddie Van Halen stuff when I was 14 back in 1980, and when I learned On Fire, I didn't know it wasn't all picked because his left hand was so strong. Yeah. His hammer-ons were like, it sounded like it was all picked to me. So even though he was going, I was going. I'm like, I was picking every note. And then to me, it sounded the same. But later on in life, I realized that he wasn't picking every note. And but that to me, that made it kind of like a really, really cool. Wow, I guess I was always doing my thing, because you go through. Do I want to be a copycat? No. This guy exists. This guy exists. You got Angus Young and Ed and Randy Rhoads and Tony Iommi and all these guitar players you grew up listening to, and there's gonna be a little bit in your playing. Everybody, it's gonna be recognizable, but it's an influence, and why not?
Yeah.
Nobody's reinventing guitar like only a handful of people did, right? So. But it's good. I love that I have my own individual kind of characteristics to the sound that I create, because I get that even though you meet your heroes, and when you're hanging out with a hero and that's someone I grew up listening to, and they go, man, you really got a thing, man. You really got this. You have this thing that's you that nobody else does, and it's like. It kind of takes your breath away, And I'm like, well, I guess all that hard work when I was young paid off, because I always wanted to be an individual of my own and not somebody else.
Which is a great thing to strive for. I mean, I've always said whenever someone uses your name as like an adjective, like that sounds like a Phil X. I mean, like if that becomes an adjective, then I'm like that's when you have a sound. Like that sounds like Jimmy Page. That sounds like Eric Johnson. It's so Eric Johnson-y. It's so, like I said, to me, I'm like that's when you have a sound.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah. Or I play a lick and somebody that I totally admire goes, do that again? And I do it again and they're like, that's so you.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
well,
you know me.
You did that when we were warming up. I was like, where's that lick pack at? Like, that was a Phil X lick. As soon as you played it.
Totally. It's coming, man.
Yeah. So one of the questions I had was, who do you think are your biggest, it kind of ties into what you were just saying, influences when it comes to tone? Like, who were your, like, 5 guys you're like, oh, I'm gonna steal that from their tone or their attack? And
I like it's there's a little bit of everybody in there, and as far as tone goes, like, I mean, probably my favorite guitar tone is Unchained on Fair Warning, and it's been my ringtone for like 20 years. And my phone actually rang when I was in Studio B at Henson talking to Ed Van Halen.
Oh, jeez.
So, and we're talking guitar and amps and pedals, and then my phone rings and he goes, big Ed smile, nice ringtone. Thanks, man, it's the best. But that tone to me is, it's one of those things where you can hear when he's hitting light, and you can hear when he's slamming. That low E string sounds so violent, because it's a 42 tuned to C sharp. I love violence when you're chugging the low E string. Now, I don't get that violence when I'm listening to emulators. You know what I mean? Like, there's something about like a fractal unit or a Kemper to my ear that doesn't achieve that violence.
Do you think it's like the Transformers kind of imploding whenever you hit them so hard that, like...
Well, you know what? It's one of those things. Everybody thinks it's a bottom end thing. Everybody thinks the low string should be bassy. That's not what it is. It's finding a sweet spot in the bass where you're just getting the right attack, and almost like, when you hit it too hard and it goes sharp, so you just back it off a little bit so you're still getting that violence. Sometimes it's how close the pickup is to the strings, but little nuances like that, it's hard to hear when you're not playing into a tube amp that really responds to it.
Yeah.
Like if I plug into a plexi, I know I'm most likely going to have to turn the bass down to get that violence. But if I'm playing something else like Black Sabbath, I'm going to turn that bass up. So it's that kind of thing where, and I love vibes. Our new record, Pow, Red and the Kisser, with Phil X and the Drills, that's coming out on March 28th. And not only is there 11 drummers drumming, 5 golden rings. Not only is there 11 drummers drumming on this record, each song has a different vibe. This was my my ode to Black Sabbath. This was my ode to something else. And whether you can hear it or not, I had the drummers in mind when I was bringing these songs to the table.
I mean, you've got everything. You've got Tommy Lee. I mean, because you've got 3 singles out so far.
The third one's coming out.
Yeah,
On the 25th of February. But we had, like, the Tommy Lee is an amazing story because I played on all his solo records. So we spent hours in the studio. But when I wanted to pitch a song, I put a lot of thought into it. And then I thought, hey, let me do something I've never done before. I went and saw some Motley Crue videos, and I searched for a Tommy Lee live drum solo. And in one solo, he's bashing at this groove. Like, it's not the solo-esque kind of thing. It's a groove. He's thrashing on it. And I'm like, whoa. I wrote Fake the Day Away to that groove.
That's a cool idea.
And the funny thing about this, I'm elongating the story here. He sent it back to me. I sent him a guitar and a vocal. I sent all the drummers, here's a guitar and a vocal. What do you think of the song? And he sampled it, slowed it down about 10 beats per minute, and put a loop on it. And he goes, I love it. This is the tempo. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we went in the studio, and even in the studio with Tommy, and Dan, our bass player, he slowed it down. Hey, let's slow it down another 2 beats per minute. Slowed it down another 2 beats per minute. We're jamming it. Goes 2 more, and that's going to be it. And then that's the tempo that you'll hear on the record.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the funny thing about it is, years later, because we did that in 2015, years later, I've sung it, I've done overdubs, it was mixed by Chris Lord Algie. I sent it to Tommy to go, hey man, here's the final mix, mastered and everything. And he goes, dude, that sounds amazing. Did you guys speed it up? I'm like, no, man.
You wanted to even slow.
Yeah. So tempo is a magical thing. He just wants to get people's heads bobbing, which I totally get.
Yeah.
He's a total head bobber. But it's an amazing, every song has kind of like a story like that. Every song that was
cool.
Delivered to somebody, we recorded Tico Torres on a day off in Vegas on the 2018 Bon Jovi tour. And then Liberty to Vito, we were in New York. Bon Jovi was in New York. We had 2 sold-out nights at Madison Square Garden. And in between, I made a Liberty sandwich. It was like I rented out the power station, and Liberty met me there with my engineer, Obie O'Brien. And we recorded Lib on my song. And I wrote that song with Liberty in mind again. It was one of those things. And the funny thing is, when I sent him the vocal and the guitar, he thought it was one of, and I go, whoa, everything sounds great, except the song's in halftime. And he just took a second, and he goes, okay, play it. And then he went, boom, it was like, it was mind-blowing how quickly he switched gears and just nailed the vibe. It was amazing.
What is the difference whenever you're with the drills? How are you dialing in stuff for that? Is that more like you're going raw, kind of scaled down?
It sounds raw.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I used to have to take 2 overdrives, and now I only have to take 1. But the vibe is, it's just a 3-piece band, so I want the guitar to obviously sound big.
Right.
Now I always run 2 amps. I'll have my Friedman half stack, and then I'll use either the Mini Chief by Greer. It's a 3-watt all-tube amp into a Supro 8-inch speaker, or if I'm in a rush, I'll just use the Supro Super, which is the amp and speaker combo. It's that 8-inch speaker. So I feel like even 412s are so amazing and powerful and huge sounding, but there's always like a mid dip to me. There's always like a little gap in the mid range, and having a small amp at the same time fills that gap. So, and I've had sound guys, sometimes you don't have a budget for a sound guy, so use the house guy, and he goes, okay, let's hear the Friedman. Fuck, that sounds amazing. And then I go, and then here's the little amp, and I play the little amp by itself, and he's like, what are we doing with that?
Yeah.
And I go, wait, let me put them both on. I put them both on, make sure that they're in phase, and there's no ground hum. And then I hit an E chord with that, and he goes, oh, I get it. So it's one of those things. It's like, but that's what I like.
Yeah.
You know, I don't impose that on anybody else. It's just everybody has a thing that they like. Some people like the whole wall of Marshalls. You know, if you if you have a van and can carry that around, sure. I was talking to somebody today. They were asking me about amps and stuff like that, and I was like, dude, I'm almost 60, and I'll carry a 412 cabinet up a flight of stairs by myself, so I can have a 412 cabinet at the club. I'll fucking do it.
Like if they'll allow,
I mean, it's not a volume thing; it's a size thing. You know,
it's just moving the air. It's just
yeah.
like
I want to feel my pant legs go like this.
yeah.
You know, and every sound guy is going to tell you to turn down, and you're going to pretend to turn down.
Yeah. What do you think are some tone mistakes that maybe younger players are making? Like, is it just cranking up the gain too much, or?
I think that's a big thing. A big thing is gain. Because everything sounds really messy. You know what? I feel like, when people go, hey man, so what's the pedal I should get if I want to sound less sloppy? I go, oh man, you need to get this pedal. It's called practice. And I think that's the key. I think, people, whether they're getting a little lazy or they just want to be, they want a more forgiving sound. I don't agree with that. If I'm in the studio and I'm trying to do a lick and it's not coming out right, and the engineer's like, maybe we should use an overdrive, I'm like, go get a coffee, give me 5 minutes, let me get my hands together.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he goes, oh, that sounds great. I want clarity. Whether it's pickups or my overdrive pedal or whatever it is, I want to be able to hear every note. I want to be able to hear, like I mentioned earlier, note separation in the chords is so important, you know?
Well, and I've heard you talk about it before. Maybe it was in a Sweetwater interview. You were talking about like how fast an amp responds.
Yeah.
To your hands.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I want the tight bottom end.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a call for everything, right? So if you wanted to be kind of flubby for a kind of a classic rock rig kind of gig, then yeah, you use 25 watt or vintage 30s or something like that with a Marshall head, and you achieve that. When I play with my Friedman or my Marshall JMP, I use 75s because they're tighter. And 70s are too bright. 80s have something that I don't like, so the 75s have the right mid-range and just the tight bottom end. And I get excited about that. It's just, oh man, listen how tight that is. And it's true in a sense of it's almost not an EQ thing. It's definitely like I was talking about. You want that low E string to be violent sounding when you chug it. And it's like string gauge too. Like when you listen to some System of a Down, and he tunes way low, but he's still using skinny strings. And I mean, it's harder to keep in tune, and the intonation isn't going to be perfect, but it's got a vibe.
Yeah.
Right? Where a lot of people tune down and get fatter strings, and then it doesn't have the same elasticity, so it doesn't give you the same response. Like I always think about this. I talk to me and, there's a group of disciples of Ed who we worship, what he was doing with the guitar. And if you go to YouTube and listen to the isolated guitar track of Hot for Teacher, and it's in 58 Flying V in his Marshall, and it's almost super clean, but everything he's doing works, and everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And then somebody will say, man, how many guitar players that do Eddie Van Halen licks on Instagram do you think could pull it off with that tone? And I'm like, 3%.
Yeah. Well, in 1984, I always thought was cool because he kind of got less gain, it seemed like, as it went on.
Exactly.
And 5150 was obviously a whole different thing, but...
Well, I think about that because I geek out on it so much. It's like if Eddie Van Halen played "Hang 'Em High" on Diver Down with the Van Halen one tone, it would have been a mess,
Yeah.
a total mess. But because it was cleaner, you heard every syncopated attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is a hard riff. I mean, that's such a hard riff. I can't. I only know like 3 people. You, Pete Thorne, and Doug Rappaport are the only people I think ever play Eddie's stuff, and I'm like, it sounds like Eddie's like rhythm.
That's flattering, man. I mean, it's funny how many people work at it, and all I had to do was learn a bunch of Van Halen when I was 14, and the style ingrained in my hands, except I picked more. But aside from that, like I'd go to Friedman's shop, and he said, hey, I need you to check out this amp. It's kind of like an Ed amp. And I just started playing. And him, who's heard a million guitar players and can open up a chassis of an amp and read it like a magazine and, oh, this isn't right, that kind of thing. I started playing Van Halen, and he was like, you got Ed's hands. I'm like, what? And he sat beside Ed's hands, so he would know. So that's flattering as fuck. And the thing is, this is funny too. One time I was recording a Van Halen-esque kind of thing, and I was using the amp, and I was playing Van Halen. It sounded like Van Halen. And then I got a call, hey, we're sending you a session. We need this by tonight because we're mixing tomorrow. Okay, if you could do it, fantastic. I'm like, send it. I import the session, and all they need is a solo. And, I got the tone dialed in, right? I start soloing. It sounds terrible because it's not Van Halen. You know what I mean? I go, wow, that sound does not work for this.
Yeah.
So it's a whole other thing, man. And then all the stories of other people plugging in, using Ed's guitar into Ed's amp and sounding like them, like Ted Nugent sounded like Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
And that's gonna happen, man. Ted's got Ted's hands, Ed's got Ed's hands.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
I think Nuno mentioned that in like a interview he played. Eddie's rig or something, and he's just like, "I just sound like me." I was so disappointed. So, is there any other Phil X signature gear that you can talk about that is coming out or in the works?
Yeah, actually.
I know one, but I don't know if you can mention it yet or not.
Well, there's a Gibson signature that we've been working on.
That's the one I've been waiting on.
And people are like, wow, so what's different? There's a lot. Aesthetically, it's hard to say that it's different, but I'm a bigger guy, so the body is an 1/8 inch thicker, and the neck is probably the fattest neck you'll feel on an SG. It's like a 56 gold top profile.
Wow.
And I got the Tony Iommi strap peg, so there's no neck diving going on. The prototype that you've seen, which is TV gold with dog ears, 2 chrome dog ears, we've changed that so it's soap bars. I love the mojo of dog ear P90s, but I love being able to lower and raise the pickup as well, because it's not uncommon for me to be in a session and the guitar sounds great, except it could be a little cleaner, and then I could just lower the pickup instead of changing guitars. And then it's less output, and then I'm getting the cleaner sound that I want. So I just like that control. And then, but we're working on it. We have a meeting next week about where it's at and when it'll come out. But what I'm excited about is the 2 price points. I'm excited about the Gibson price point for players that really want a Gibson, and then the Epiphone price point for the guitar players that can't afford a Gibson.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have those both, and that's one of the reasons I joined Gibson, because of that. And Epiphone is killing it lately. I was kind of blown away. I went to the garage last time I was in Nashville, and I tried one of and I think they really made the right move making the new Epiphones with the Gibson headstock.
For sure.
That just changed the game for sure.
But
man, I was playing an Epiphone Firebird 1 with just one more pickup, and I'm like, oh my god, this feels amazing. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And then I ended up grabbing one. And but it's when you these are toys, man. you know, it's nice to have a variety. You have a variety, I have a variety. Wives don't get it. Why do you need so many guitars? But my wife doesn't say that anymore since she started a catering company, and we need a barbecue, a smoker, and a 36-inch griddle, and two 36-inch Vikings in the kitchen. You know? I'm like, why do you need so much stuff to cook on?
Yeah. Like, just go play your guitars. Well, and that's something too that we should talk about, because obviously you guys have been doing the hero drops,
Yeah.
which has been amazing. I mean,
No,
trying to keep up with it. I mean,
it's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
we're trying to, you know, it's funny because you have to do work, and you can't not pay attention to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we have friends. We had a crew that would help us when we had big drops, and we would drop off. There was one day that we dropped off at 5 fire stations,
that's cool.
and but that's a lot of food.
Yeah.
So a lot of people not only dropping off, but also helping with the prep. And I would drop it off, man. There was a couple of times where I had some crazy conversations with some fire chiefs. And there was one time in Hollywood on Wilshire where I was dropping off the food as the bell went off, and they were jumping on a truck and driving to the next call,
Wow.
which was, I think at the time, it was Runyon Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, Runyon Canyon's on fire, let's go. It's like, what? And the chief's like, I just got back. I'm gonna eat some food before I go.
Go, yeah. Well, to anyone who hasn't, look up what the hero drops are, and if you want to support that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think right now we're okay. I mean, we started a GoFundMe and got lots of donations, which, I mean, tell all the firefighters, all the departments. We went to police stations, sheriff departments. We were feeding National Guards, and we're just telling everybody, hey, we wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for the people that contributed.
We didn't talk about it, but your pick. Can people buy these?
Okay, so mine says Phil X on it, but I think I brought one. Hold on a second. This is the one that you can get on the Dunlop site, and it also comes in all the gauges.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, because when you gave me, I was like, this feels like a 70 or something like that.
Well, you know what? Mine is an 88.
88.
But because it's a flex, it feels between an 88 and 73, which I really like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really good for pick slides.
As we were talking about too.
Here's the thing, though, man. The magic happens when your skin touches in between in the hole.
Yeah.
Something happens there, and I've never ever dropped one of these, no matter how sweaty I was. If I'm throwing it in the audience, it's because there's been too many pick slides and it's all dented up.
You want to play us
play
out?
out? Yeah, let's play
and then
out.
we'll hear the pedal some more.
Yeah, well, let's go to the one. I don't know, man. These strings feel so fat.
Perfect.